plagiarized economic plan over on BuzzPoke. So go ahead and take a look at that. So yeah, that's a little bit more going on there with the loony left. Speaking, of course, of the good old loony left.
You don't have a right to know everything in a separation of powers government, my friend. That is the difference between a parliamentary government and a separation of powers government.
Well, Miss Eleanor Holmes Norton, sunlight defeats that entire line of bullcrap. Squeeze. That bull squeeze, that stinky stuff coming out your mouth. Because we're going to shed some sunlight on things going on in the good old federal government. One thing I want to draw your attention to is the bureaucracy, despite the fact that they're still trying to work on a budget for the fiscal year 2015. They've passed a temporary stopgap, so they have a couple more months to pass a budget that should have already been passed and should be going into effect on October 1st, but they still haven't done so. Probably because they don't know how to balance a budget. Most of them probably can't even balance their own checkbooks. Yet they want to take away the Second Amendment rights of veterans who are smart enough to know that their spouses can do a better job at accounting than they can, and make the wise decision to let them balance the books. But somehow they're not smart enough to and wise enough to maintain their own Second Amendment rights. So, while they're doing that, the same people who support that kind of unconstitutional action can't even do their job and pass a balanced budget to begin with, or even a budget on time, much less a balanced one. So, but while they're doing that, believe it or not, they are still spending money from the 2009, not the 2008, because that was the first one, but the second one, the bump up of the economic stimulus package, that whole debacle, that Keynesian debacle that was passed back in first in 2008 and then increased in 2009. They're still spending from those funds from 2009. So, in some areas. So, interesting. Consider that, folks. So, we have such a high deficit and we have such a high federal debt or national debt, but they're still spending money that was set aside out of that. You know, if you didn't use it before, why don't you use it to pay our bills, pay down that national debt? No common sense, none's. And of course, you know, once that money is allocated, the executive branch is who, by and large, does most of the spending at that point. Well, it sounds to me like they hoarded their allowance and lied about it. You know, that's the way I'd look at it, as a kitchen table economics. You know, if I gave my kid $5 to go buy a gallon of milk, knowing that a gallon of milk costs $3, and told her she can pick up an ice cream, and she came home and asked her if there was any change, and she told me I got 2 cents, and didn't bother to ask her what kind of ice cream she got. It could have been a $2 ice cream, could have been a 50-center. She pocketed the rest of the money. Well, when something else comes up and we need to use that, mind you, this is money above and beyond her allowance. And I say, hey, you know, we're a little short here. And I look at her and she goes, well, I don't have anything other than my allowance. Well, no. You are hiding $1.50 from me because you got a little 50-cent ice cream cup. So, yeah, that's kind of the same thing. Of course, I'm not going to really ask hard for that money back anyway. I'm going to budget it as though it's already gone and spent. So, that's what they're doing, folks. But if it's your own pocket and you're doing that with yourself, then you forget you have that $1.50 hidden in your jeans pocket. Well, when you wash your jeans pocket, there's a chance that the dollar bill is going to get kind of washed up and ruined and unusable. So it's better to take it out and reallocate it beforehand, isn't it? Anyway, we could talk about that kind of stuff all day. Other things going on in the Fed, the federal government. there's private jobs out there that have a high turnover rate as far as their employees go. Childcare, nationwide is one of those. People get burnt out relatively quickly, or they make mistakes because they simply don't bother to review all the laws as well as policies out there. And some businesses, they have policies that conflict with the actual laws and regulations and licensing. And then when somebody is following the policies and gets caught following the policy and it violates the actual law, unfortunately, like in some states, like here in Texas, that normally means a termination is involved. So there's a high turnover rate in that type of a private job. But in most government bureaucracies, there's not a high turnover rate. Even in the military, it's 4 years, every 4 years, because it's a 4-year contract. So, there's still some relatively stable jobs when you think about that. But in most bureaucracies, once somebody gets hired, especially if they can make it past the 2-year mark, they're pretty much vetted and tenured. It's really hard because of the union, SEIU to be specific, to get rid of them. So there isn't much of a revolving door. Once somebody's in the bureaucracy, they're set with a job for usually a really long time. Not so with the Department of Homeland Security. At both the lowest levels and the highest levels, they have the highest turnover rate of all federal agencies. Even a higher turnover rate than congressmen and congressional aides, congressional staffers. So, who should have a pretty high turnover rate. And there's a good portion of them that should probably, do 2 years and then be looking for another job. Doesn't work out that way, but it should be that way. So, especially if voters are paying attention to the voting records of their elected reps. But anyway, Department of Homeland Security has this high turnover rate, which of course, because you don't have people sitting by who actually know the way things work, have their fingers on the pulse, have their connections with the intelligence community, getting good information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that revolving door is leaving them with very little amount of tenure or competence, constantly having to retrain people and get them up to that competence level. As soon as they hit it, a lot of them are going into private sector to do similar jobs, making a heck of a lot more money, where they're expected to be a lot more competent than they are working for the government. So you have that, and then of course you have people that are caught messing up and get fired. So because of that, the Department of Homeland Security isn't all that secure. They're kind of, overall, as an entity, kind of, sort of, unable to maintain the level of overall competence that should invoke any amount of public confidence whatsoever. Think about it. There's a good article over at the Washington Post about that, of all places. And it's top-level turnover makes it harder for DHS to stay on top of evolving threats. So now it's not DHS's job necessarily to watch threats. That's the intelligence community. But they should be able to follow briefings and stay up with current events as they get briefed by the intelligence community. So there you have it, folks. There's my 2 cents anyway on that, being somebody from the intelligence community at one time. So, and also coming out of our great, wonderful federal government, Obama has decided to deploy more U.S. personnel. We have more boots on the ground to join in the fight and the war to get entrenched and fight that nasty entity out there. We're going to send in the army with their tanks and their Bradleys and their M4s and M249s and M240 Bravos and their Kevlar, all armored up and ready to fight against Ebola. Yes, folks, you heard that right. We have terrorist groups doing things that are direct threats to our country, as well as direct threats to our country's allies, which are indirect threats to us. All over the Middle East and North Africa and East Africa. And the only way we're going to hold key terrain in the fight in the global war on terror is to put boots on the ground. Obama refuses to do so, but he's going to put boots on the ground with people who, I'm sorry, but your standard infantryman is not equipped to battle disease. It takes a doctor and medical personnel and nurses and chemists and biologists, etc., etc., etc. Not Joe Snuffy Dogface. Joe Snuffy Dogface is best putting his boots into Iraq and helping arrange the meetings between the members of ISIS and Al-Qaeda Iraq and Ansar al-Sunnah and Ansar al-Islam, arrange the meetings between them and the 72 Virginians that they're going to meet in hell or heaven or whatever the case might be. So it's one of those cases of right tool for the right job, and Obama's doing it wrong. It's just another big screw up. Of course, he doesn't have any idea of how to properly employ military forces whatsoever. I mean, come on. When it came to the hunt for bin Laden, he was told, you're going to make this decision, you're going to give us a yes or otherwise we're going to go anyway. And when it comes to the decision making and the briefings and everything, you're going to sit in the back and keep your mouth shut, which is why he's sitting there biting on his finger, because they didn't let him talk, because had he talked, he would have screwed up the operation, which is already kind of on the edge there, because some of the intelligence is a little bit old on that one, and it had already waited too long. They should have gone weeks earlier, and may have been slightly more successful had it been done a couple of weeks earlier, or as much as a month earlier. Just like the attempted rescue of the American hostages being held by ISIS. If that had been done a month earlier, they probably would have, when the intelligence was fresh and freshly analyzed and corroborated, probably would have rescued those hostages. Instead, they got there a day or two after the hostages had been moved, because they waited too long for somebody to make a flippant decision. So, right tool for right job at the right time, and Obama just doesn't understand that. He's trying to use a corkscrew to remove the spark plugs from his car. Yeah, good luck with that, buddy. Yeah, all kinds of things, folks. And there's so much more we can talk about today. We can poke fun at and be tongue-in-cheek at and look at things going on in our nation for hours and hours on the show. I can do it all day long if I didn't have other things I had to do. Not that I don't like talking to y'all, but I also like writing, and I also have other responsibilities to earn a paycheck and take care of my family and take care of my household and all that other stuff, just like y'all do. So, we are limited to only one more story this morning. One more. What shall it be? Dun 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 dun. Okay. Well, you know how much we love academia around here, especially with the ties to Common Core and to International Baccalaureate, and the intrusion of the Copper Chicos into indoctrinating our youth and taking away First Amendment rights and telling them what to think, etc., etc., etc. We're going to teach you how to critically think, because we're going to tell you exactly what you're allowed to think, and if you think outside the box that we put you in, then you're wrong. That's the way academia is, folks. But anyway, swing on over to California and look at San Diego State University there in California. There's a college student down there who is proudly displaying his U.S. flag on the balcony of his dorm room. Now, mind you, San Diego is the home to a Navy Yard that is one of the largest U.S. Marine bases here in the continental U.S. There's a lot of U.S. Marines there, so you would think San Diego would be a little bit different than your average California left-wing secede from the country, and the country would cheer if they did so, city. So San Diego, you'd think, would be a little bit more patriotic. But not so. San Diego State University, who told the college student, you can't fly your U.S. flag because it might offend a foreign student. This is America, folks. If a foreign student comes here to go to college, they should fully expect to see a U.S. flag. They should not be offended by it. They should be thankful that they're getting an education in this country. And they're getting the opportunity to go to school in this country. Some of them are coming from countries where they don't have the greatest universities. Now, some of them might be coming from some place with better universities. I don't know. Because maybe this might have been all mommy and daddy can afford. Because they don't exactly come from a background where people earn their own education. You know, kind of like some of our other folks out there. But anyway, San Diego State University told the student that he had to remove his U.S. flag because it offends these foreign students, or could possibly. Give me a break. I mean, seriously? Because it could possibly offend foreign students. You know what? Like I said, if they're offended by the U.S. flag, then they need to just turn in their visas and go to hell home. You know, they shouldn't be here in the first place if they're offended by our country. They shouldn't come here to go to school if they're offended by our country. Just like they shouldn't skip the border and then tell us that our government is wrong. Because if their government back in their country of origin was so great before those who came here illegally, then they wouldn't have come here illegally. They would have stayed where they were if the place they came from was so much better. So, evidently, if we're doing it better than where you came from, just shut up and enjoy it. And if you came here illegally, shut up and go back home. Get to the back of the line. So, again, folks, just my 2 cents. But you can go over to BuzzPo again, where we have the article up there. For college student ordered to get rid of American flag from his balcony might offend foreign people. Well, folks, we're winding down the show for today. This Monday, September 22nd. Again, happy birthday, Mom! And happy autumn solstice to those of you out there. And just remember, you can always call in and tell me your thoughts on these subjects or other subjects at 520-226-8567. And if you call during the show, of course, during the live hours, we'll definitely put you on the air as long as you can keep the language rated PG. So we don't care if you offend people. We just care what kind of word choice you use. Please be intelligent and articulate. In other words, leave the F-bombs in the arsenal. They don't work here. The only thing they get you is clicked off. Well, that brings us to the end of the show for this Monday, September 22nd. I have been your host, Paul Gregor Matushak, and I will see you right back here between 8 and 9 tomorrow morning. That's 8 and 9 Central Time tomorrow morning on the Mouth of Matushak Show. And until then, bye-bye.
Mr. America, look what you've done. Yeah, looking at the country is not what I intended. Gotta start to make a change before the never-ending story of a failed nation, one straight out of luck. Like a million Tyler Perry movies, you suck. All your little have life, you're still selfish. You want more voting in your self-interest now instead of the core principles that made this country both honest and true. Free to speak, worship, pursuit of your happiness too. With all the money you fly, you gon' be needing a big freeze. Hate the size of the Fed like Jesus hated the fig tree. As the spending goes up, you gotta borrow some more. Borrowing from the Chinese like, oh my lord. Instead you just tax more, you're increasing the size of the federal government. Yeah, the Georgia surprise, you'll be done like Detroit. Man, no, you ain't coming back. forget it, I'm out. I'm muzzle loading my gas.